Hello, and welcome to the second episode of Chalk It Up, the Sports Talk Network's new snooker podcast. And we're here to discuss the summary of round one of the Masters and also the quarterfinals, the lineups, and sort of my predictions, which didn't work out too badly. From round one, I think I got 5 out of the 8 victors in it, but the one thing we have to discuss was the nature of the round one matches. I'm sure anyone who's been watching round one so far have noticed a certain pattern in the score lines, but it's frankly like 8 matches finished 6-2. If you're talking, when I got to 3 matches, was so when I got to the third game of the first round and it finished 6-2, I was thinking, well, this is a bit odd. When the second day finished and all 4 matches finished with the same scoreline, was like, well, that's a bit of an anomaly. Now, with Neil Robertson finishing off last night with a 6-2 victory over Chris Wakelin, it's just frankly bizarre. It's such an odd. I don't think it'll ever. It's obviously never happened before. I doubt it will ever happen again. It was strange. Few of the matches were one-sided, but a couple of them could have gone either way. But for each match to finish 6-2 is just beyond belief, and it's quite fun. It's uh, there was talk about after the fifth match of the 8 was finished, the odds of all of them finishing 6-2 was 44,000 to 1. Neil Robertson made a comment last night when he finished up to make the clean set of 6-2s for all 8 matches. He said that he's made somebody a multi-millionaire. If somebody was brave or I know crazy enough to put a bet on all 8 matches finishing 6-2, fair play. You probably are a millionaire now. The odds would have been astronomical on that. Very strange, especially given the matchups. A few of them were like quite tight. The bookmakers had them quite close in 4 or 5 of the games. So for each match to finish 6-2 is just, I know we're living in bizarre world basically with that sort of thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through the round summaries from the top bracket down and then sort of preview the quarterfinals. And then I will set myself up for a fall by then predicting who I think will win the quarters, onto the semis, and who will eventually become the champion of the Masters. So yeah, the first match was defending champion Sean Murphy against Wu Yizhe of China. I had it down as Sean Murphy to edge it. I was thinking maybe 6-4, but obviously Sean Murphy just didn't show up. He said himself he had one of the most disappointing showings that he's ever had. Probably thinks this is worse at the Masters. It's hard to disagree, but he was very magnanimous. Wu played much better snooker. He was more fluent and deserved his win. Sean Murphy will he's taken a few days off to reflect on it. I'm sure he'll come back and finish the season strongly because he's a classy player and 100% that was a blip for him. So the second match in the top half of the bracket was Mark Selby and Zhao Gudong, another promising Chinese player full of inventiveness, full of sharp play. Mark Selby, though, was my pick for that one and he fell. Just didn't really get into the game. His normal sort of granite play, his match play just wasn't there for long enough periods. And Zhao took full advantage and raced off to, would you believe it, a 6-2 win. That's 2 Chinese players into the quarterfinals with one guaranteed into the semi-final. We'll get onto that in a few minutes. The next match in the top half was Neil Robertson and Chris Wakelin. That was played last night. That was the one that set up the full round of 6-2s. Neil Robertson, fantastic player. I had him. Chris Wakelin came in obviously to cover the absence of Ronnie O'Sullivan, who had pulled out with some health issues prior to the tournament. So Chris Wakelin got in, wasn't expecting to play, put up a pretty good effort in the first half of the session, where he sort of nipped and tucked. They both played very, very positive. I think the first half session was probably the best quality of play from both sides because they were both attacking. They were taking on each shot. They weren't sort of relenting when they had the opportunity. And I went into the mid-session break at 2-all. lo and behold, Nate Robertson finds about 5 extra gears, just absolutely rattles through 3 brilliant entries in 4 frames to clinch the 6-2 victory. I don't really know if I should say 6-2, but I might just say victory now because I'm fed up saying 6-2. So the top half of the bracket finishes off with Kyron Wilson and Si Hui. Kyron Wilson was struggling for form. He had Q issues at the UK Championship. He admitted as such, said felt like he was close to having a breakdown in his first round defeat in the UK Championship, but has come back, had his Q issues fixed, his well-documented issues with family health have hopefully subsided now enough for him to be happier on tour. And a happy Kyron Wilson is a Kyron Wilson we see and would saw in that match where he just rattled. He was in fine form. That made me rethink him as potential champion. But it was pretty good. He barely made mistakes, but any mistake he made was punished. And Kyron Wilson was just absolutely fantastic from start to finish. Unreal performance, well deserved in the quarterfinals. 6-2. So the bottom half of the draw, the one that stood out for me was Judd Trump and Ding Junhui. I thought this would be an absolutely brilliant match. Ding obviously hasn't hit the form that he can. Previous champion here, of course, but he hasn't hit the form. But when he's on form, and he does play some great snooker at the Masters, I thought he would have put a great performance up and made it a tight match between himself and Judd. But Judd just was on a different level, just cueing fantastically. Easily picking up where he left off last year, even though remarkably didn't win a title last year. He made a few finals, didn't play bad snooker. I got a chance to chat to him in the Northern Irish Open where he made the final and lost to Jack Lazowski, but he was fantastic through most of last year. Just didn't get that title. If he plays like this, it's coming. If it's not coming here, he'll get a title. He might get multiple this year. I wouldn't be surprised, but Ding just wasn't able to hold off Judd's attack enough, made too many mistakes, and Judd just ran away with it. 6-2. Mark Allen and Mark Williams were then up next. Battle of the Marks. I thought this would be a very tight match. Mark Allen has been dogged by sort of criticism over his negative play over the last couple of seasons. When he was winning titles, winning his couple of Triple Crown titles, Masters in the UK, he played free flowing attacking snooker. He seems to have adopted a more pedestrian. Pedestrian's a mean word. Bit more of a pragmatic approach, I'll say, and it hasn't resulted in the prettiest snooker. He won the English Open last year, and the final went on, I think it was 1 a.m. UK time. It finished. I don't know. You could have watched 2 Godfather films by the time the film was, or by the time the match was over. It was real. Some of his matches are real wars of attrition. They're not pleasant to watch, but although he did play a lot of tentative snooker and a lot of what people would refer to as negative play, he also shone in the second session against Mark Williams. Mark just wasn't at the races at all, but Mark Allen capitalized on every single mistake and played some brilliant snooker as well. So I'm quite excited that he's made the quarterfinals, not just because I'm from Northern Ireland, but if he can adopt a mixture of his brilliant safety play and that more free-flowing play that gets him those titles, we're in for a treat with him, not just for the Masters, but for the season. The second to last match in the bracket was John Higgins and Barry Hawkins. I had John Higgins to win this. So the bookmakers made it quite a tight match. I guess a lot of them taking the John Higgins is 50 now, but when he's queuing and in form, there's barely anyone better. He plays such beautiful shots. His long potting is sublime to watch. And Barry Hawkins just didn't have enough in him. Barry Hawkins was he was making some rudimentary mistakes. I was quite in my article I wrote. I was quite surprised at how rudimentary some of them were. So maybe he was just had an off day. Maybe he wasn't feeling well. He was coughing a lot during the match. So he may have picked up something. like Mark Allen had said in his match that he had just come off food poisoning and didn't know if he was going to put in any sort of performance. In fact, he said that he might have had to wear a diaper to get through the match if it had went on much longer. So maybe Barry had something similar, or a little cold or something. It is the time of year to pick up such things, but he just wasn't at the races. But John Higgins, you know, anyone who's seen John Higgins knows that he's a classy player, and he put in a strong, solid performance, and he's through with a score. Did I tell you the scoreline? 6-2, I think it was. The final match of the first round, lower bracket, was Zhao Zintong against Gary Wilson. Zhao is just, he's an epic player. Second seed, won the world title. He's just a joy to watch when he's on top form. I think that he is going to be a force to be reckoned with now in any match. Gary Wilson just wasn't able to cope with him. It's absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. He is a decent player, but Zhao Zintong, when he's in form, just has absolutely, like, there's barely anyone that can cope with him. So yeah, I had him to win, and he won quite convincingly. So that sort of wraps up the round of 16, and then today starts off with the quarterfinals. And my word, they're going to be exciting quarterfinals. I do not see 6-2 entering the fray too often in here. There's 4 quarterfinals. There may be 1 6-2, but if this ends up 4 6-2s, I'll eat my shoe, because it's just going to be, it'd just be so baffling. So we'll start off. So lower bracket plays first. So the first of the quarterfinals I'll preview is Judd Trump and Mark Allen. As I said, Mark Allen has been dogged with this negative tactics and stuff like that, but he can also drag somebody into a real battle. Judd Trump is not a player. He's got great safety, but he's not a player that loves being in long, drawn-out battles. So I would wonder with this one, is Mark Allen going to revert to recent type and try to stymie Judd Trump's more attacking instincts? Or is he going to deliver on his promise and the hopes of other people and play attacking snooker and try to go head-to-head against Judd? I would love to see them both free-flowing, but Judd, I think, would just have too much for Mark if they were going to go through that sort of style of play. So I think Mark would be wiser to adopt a more methodical play, or more tentative, try and get snookers, try and break up the play a bit. If he gets the chance, obviously, to finish, go positive, but otherwise, I would see Judd winning this. I think that I had initially predicted Mark Allen to go through, but haven't seen them both play. I can't say anyone other than Judd Trump. So Judd Trump's my pick for that, and I'm going to go 6-4. Yeah, 6-4. I almost said 6-2 there, just as a reaction. But then he or either of them will play John Higgins or Zhao Zintong. This is going to be a tricky one. I can see this going the distance. I can see this being 6-5. I can also see it being 6-1. And the way I can see that is if Zhao comes out and plays the way he was playing against Gary, because I think that's him on, like, sort of level 6 out of 10. He'll obviously up his game for John Higgins, legend of the game, cannot give away any sort of, like, the smallest bit to John Higgins, or he'll pounce. So I think he'll notch up his level a couple in this match. If he does that and John Higgins isn't playing perfectly, then it could be a runaway for Zhao. But I'm feeling it's going to be a tight match. I'm feeling John's going to come in positive after his win over Barry. So I'm going to go John Higgins for this one, and go John Higgins 6-5 final frame decider, one to watch. I think it'll be absolutely epic. And then tomorrow's quarterfinals, we got the all Chinese final between Wu Yizhe and Zhao Gudong. This is going to be a tough one. Wu Yizhe played fantastic against Sean, as the Zhao against Mark Selby. But otherwise, both of them first time masters, played very exceptionally, showed no nerves. Pretty much faultless displays from both of them. So I find this one a tough one to predict. They also either of them didn't go in the best of form in the run up. So this one's a flip of a coin. It's definitely not going to be a 6-2. I'm going to go Uize just for how well he dismantled Sean Murphy. I'll go with him, and I'm going to say he will win 6 frames to 3. And then rounding up the quarterfinals, I will say between Neil Robertson and Kyron Wilson. Again, a tough one because Kyron and Neil just absolutely rattled off centuries, just played beautiful snooker. They came out of the interval break, and it's the same setup for this. It's best of 11 frames, so it'll be the same 4 frames interval, finish off the match then. So either of them could go on a run and win. Could be 3-1 up, 4-0 up, potentially. I was very impressed with Neil Robertson yesterday. And Kyron still, despite his impressive display, hasn't had the best few months for various reasons. But I don't know. It's a tough one. It's going to be a flip of the coin as well. But I'm going to go Neil Robertson, and I'm going to go 6-4 for him. So we'll have the Australian in the semi-final. The Australian in the semi-final. So going on from there, because I'll try and get a show in after the semis are done, quarters are done, semis. I think that between John Higgins and Judd Trump, it's tough because Judd had the overall better head-to-head, but John Higgins seems determined. He's 50. He's said he's more relaxed about his game now. He said that he had a chat last year with his family, said it's not the be-all and end-all anymore. He's achieved everything he can in the game, one of the all-time greats. So maybe he'll play a bit more relaxed. I do think that Judd would have to have an off day. The romantic side of me would want John Higgins to win every title nearly ever, but I'll go more realistic and say Judd Trump to win that one. I'll probably go 6-4 for that one because the semi-finals are also best of 11. And the other semi-final where I thought we say Neil Robertson, I'll go based on how good he was against Wakeland. If he gets past Kyron Wilson, Neil Robertson's he'll be playing so full of confidence that I think he'd be too much for most people. So despite Wu playing really well in his first Masters, I'll go Neil Robertson in that one, and I'll bring it back. I'll go 6-2. May as well. Why not? Bring back the classic. So that leaves Neil Robertson against Judd Trump for the final. So the final is best of 19, so it's first to 10 frames. I will be doing a preview of this, so I'll see if they're even in the final. But so Judd Trump versus Neil Robertson, I do feel that Judd he's desperate for that title. He's desperate to put the lack of titles last year behind him. I think Neil is a fantastic player. He shows up well when he's in big finals. He nearly always performs. Head to head, I think based on their form and sort of the desire Judd might have just to get over the line finally after a few barren months, I'll go Judd Trump to win this one, and I'll say Judd Trump will pick up the trophy. I'm going to go 10-6 in that one. But again, as I said, we'll see if they're even in the final come Sunday, and I'll be doing a preview after the semi-finals are completed. I'll round up the semi-finals, see where my predictions are, and then see how we're looking for the final. Finally, just want to say, obviously, the Masters is the non-ranking invitational tournament for the top 16. Normally the top 16 in the world, unless somebody pulls out like Ronnie did. So it's the best of the best, really. And to talk of best of the best, there was barely anyone better in the Masters than Paul Hunter. Paul Hunter is the player who the trophy is named after. He was dominant for 4 years. He made and won 3 finals: 2001, 2002, and 2004. And in 2003, he made the semi-finals. It's a brilliant story for him for the Masters, but obviously laced in tragedy as he passed away in 2006, sadly from cancer at the age of 27. He played his last match. He still played. He was getting chemotherapy and still played at tournaments. Performed even though he said he was in extreme pain for the most part of it. So it's 20 years since his last Masters appearance, where he got knocked out in the first round. He passed away in October that year. So if you're a fan of Paul Hunter, know about him or want to know about him, I'll be doing an article in Sports Talk Florida. It's a long read article. So just to talk about him and sort of pay tribute to him. The trophy's named after him for a reason. He was a scintillating player. He was cut from a different cloth. Absolutely wonderful to watch. So I hope you've enjoyed the show. Feel free to read that article on Paul Hunter or any of my summaries on Sports Talk Florida. And I will see you after the semifinals to see if I have managed to get any of my predictions right and to see if we've finally broken this 6-2 curse. Take care. Have a great day, everybody.